The billionaire's son discovers the unconscious MAID. What followed was heartbreaking and transformative. Ethan Blackwell felt the weight of his family's expectations pressing down on him like the oppressive California sun. The gilded halls of their Westlake mansion echoed with the laughter of elite socialites, yet he reveled in none of it. He slipped away from the clamor, his heart racing in rebellion against the insistent whispers of conformity that shrouded him. Each step he took away from the party was an act of defiance, each pause built on the yearning for authenticity. He roamed the mansion until he found himself in an unused library, dust coating the air like unfulfilled dreams. There, amidst the shadows and forgotten stories, he stumbled upon Maria sprawled across the floor, a vision of tranquility amidst the chaos of riches. The maid wasn't merely an employee, she was an embodiment of unspoken narratives, her ordinary life stark against his extravagant upbringing. He knelt beside her, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan felt a connection that transcended their worlds, a recognition of struggle that stirred something deep within him. It was there, among the tales of long-forgotten poets and authors, that he encountered the ache in his chest, a longing to escape the gilded cage his life had become. As Ethan managed to wake Maria, confusion flickered across her features, mirrored by the turmoil brewing inside him. "Why can't I just be me?" he quietly asked himself. Torn between the privilege that defined him and the heart that yearned for genuine connection, he found himself wading through the murky waters of morality for the first time. Could a future entwined with Maria even exist outside the suffocating embrace of wealth? Yet, despite their growing bond, the crushing expectations weighed on him like an anvil. It was when he learned of his father's past injustices against Maria's family that he felt a searing sense of urgency. Pieces began to fall into place. The privilege he was born into was stained by the wrongs of those who came before him. What was success if it required turning a blind eye to suffering? His mind raced, every memory of laughter with his father now tinged with anger and betrayal. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Ethan stood at a precipice, the echoes of power tugging at him just as forcefully as the pull of something real and true. The thought of confessing to his father made his stomach churn. He could already hear the berating voice, the stern warnings about family reputation and the importance of keeping his distance from distractions. Each breath he took felt like a betrayal to all that demanded compliance. But the thought of losing Maria, losing himself to the facade, darkened his heart with a weight almost unbearable. As the tension escalated, the fear of consequence morphed into a desperate need to confront the reality of his life. Would he stand up to the man who had suffocated his dreams, or remain the devoted son of a dynasty that valued image over humanity? The mansion around him seemed to tilt, threatening to crash down on the choices he had yet to make. Could he find the courage to defy tradition and carve a new path, or would he succumb to the chains of privilege, forever haunted by unfulfilled desires? In that moment of strife, as the debate within him roared louder than the celebrations beyond, he felt an inevitable shift, a shift that could shatter everything he knew. Ethan stood still as a storm raged within him. Clenching his fists, he sought clarity amidst the chaos enveloping his thoughts. The dazzling lights of the party seemed distant now, fading into insignificance beneath the overwhelming influence of his tumultuous emotions.
With Maria awake and the weight of his family's past pushing against him, he felt a strange determination rising like a tide. He had to act, and he had to do it soon. He took a deep breath, trying to organize the whirlwind inside his heart and head. Why had he allowed himself to be molded into this version of Ethan Blackwell, one who turned a blind eye to others in the desperate grip of circumstance? There was no denying the sharp pang of guilt. Knowing what had been done to Maria's family gnawed at him. That realization simmered beneath the surface of every laugh shared, every thought they exchanged, igniting a fire within him to forge a new identity rooted in truth. Yet the path ahead was fraught with uncertainties. The mansion he had once viewed as a sanctuary now felt like a prison. Its grandeur mocked him, a constant reminder of what he had inherited. A life teeming with comfort, yet devoid of meaning. He had spent the last several years pursuing the goals laid out by his father, chasing hollow dreams that glittered under the sun, but crumbled to dust beneath scrutiny. Suddenly he could see that polished veneer for what it truly was, a thin, fragile layer that could shatter at any moment. He grabbed a book off the library shelf, its spine cracked with age, and opened it to reveal a world of stories rich with wisdom and nuance. Each turn of the page ignited in him lost desires. He envisioned spending time with Maria, not just stealing moments away from prying eyes, but building a genuine connection that could change everything. She could teach him perspectives he'd never considered, an authenticity that could shatter the glass walls surrounding
him. Ethan resolved that he would change. No longer would he float through life as a byproduct of his lineage. He would confront his father about the oppression of those he deemed inferior. It was a brave thought, and yet the fear of his father's response loomed large. He imagined his father's disbelief, a quick dismissal laced in harsh critique. But as days passed, an electric current surged within him, urging him forward. With each passing moment, the idea of confronting his father metamorphosed from a distant fear to an urgent necessity. If he ever wanted to walk beside Maria, he had to dismantle the lies his family cultivated. The thought of losing her was unbearable, but even more so was the prospect of living a lie, hollow and unrewarding. Their lives were inseparably intertwined now, bridging chasms of difference, intertwining threads of the past. As Ethan stepped out of the library, he felt a surge of adrenaline. It was now or never. He marched down the grand hallway, a transformative energy driving him toward his father's study. His heart raced, not only with fear, but with the burning desire for change. Just before he reached the door, doubt crept in like a shadow. What if he was overstepping? What if the consequences were dire? Could he withstand the repercussions? Then he heard a soft voice in his mind, the dream of an intertwined future whispering, "You have to find out the truth." With renewed resolve, he knocked, his hand trembling as he formed a fist to confront the realities of his life. The moment hung pregnant with tension. Inside awaited not just his father, but the reckoning of his existence. The door creaked open, and as he stepped inside, he realized it was time to dismantle the very foundations that had built him. But would he find the strength to face his past and embrace a new future? The air was thick with anticipation, and Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for a confrontation that would define him. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as the door closed behind him. The study, lined with bookshelves and adorned with his father's accolades, felt suffocating. Every inch of the room exuded authority and control, symbols of a legacy steeped in privilege but tainted by complicity. His father's commanding presence loomed behind the mahogany desk, eyes narrowing with curiosity and skepticism as he looked up from his papers. "Ethan," his father began, a hint of impatience creeping into his voice,
"What brings you here? I was in the middle of—" "I need to talk to you, Father," Ethan interrupted, his voice wavering but firm. The words, once unthinkable, now felt vital. "It's about the family business." The piercing gaze of his father shifted, an umbrella of tension replacing the casual indifference. "The family business? You've rarely shown any interest in the past." "Things are different now," Ethan asserted. "I've been thinking about our impact and the way we operate. There's something I
need to address." The admission sent a shiver down his spine, but it also fueled his resolve. "Let me guess, you're getting soft on the employees, feeling guilty about the past. You're not suggesting we compromise the values that built this company, are you?" The disdain in his father's voice was palpable, cutting deeper than any insult. He had grown accustomed to that tone, dismissive, cutting. Yet it stung more intensely given the stakes. "No, Father, it's not about softness. It's about integrity." The word hung in the air between them, reverberating against the walls steeped in tradition. "I've seen the consequences of our actions. Maria, she's more than just another name on the list of employees. Her family lost so much because of what we did." For a moment, silence anchored the room. His father's expression shifted, confusion flaring briefly, swiftly replaced by indignant anger. "You are dangerously misinformed. What happened to her family was an unfortunate occurrence, but it was necessary for our growth." "Necessary?" Ethan's voice rose, laced with frustration. "At what cost? You think that power comes without accountability? People lost their homes, their futures. Don't you care about that at all?" His father leaned back, the tension palpable, eyeing Ethan with a blend of disappointment and disbelief. "You've clearly let your emotions cloud your judgment. We cannot afford to show weakness in this business." Ethan's hands clenched at his sides, trembling slightly. This was a fight he had been preparing for without knowing it. Each visit to the library, every conversation with Maria had armed him with clarity he had sorely lacked. But what about those who are powerless? We have a responsibility, don't we? If we've built something, shouldn't it be a force for good? His father's gaze hardened, the lines of his face deepening with resolve. "You will do well to remember whose name you carry. This family built everything we have with hard choices. If you're reconsidering that approach, perhaps you should reflect on your own values." Ethan's resolve began to waver as he processed the utter rejection of his beliefs. The walls felt like they were closing in, each piece of furniture an echo of his father's beliefs. Yet, beneath the pain, a spark ignited, a sense of liberation. "No, I refuse to accept that. You may have built your empire through fear and subjugation, but I will not anymore." The door beckoned behind him, a symbol of liberation and possibility. In that moment, Ethan realized the fight wasn't solely against his father, but an internal battle to redefine his identity. He needed to fortify his beliefs and acknowledge that pursuing truth was more challenging, but far more rewarding than any superficial ambition. As he turned on his heel, the finality of his words stirred a tempest in the room. His father's shock morphed into fury, but Ethan was already stepping into the unknown, a world without the restraints of his father's expectations. Outside, the night air greeted him, crisp and full of potential. Every breath ushered in a newfound conviction, but uncertainty lingered. He had taken the first step, yet countless more awaited him, including the challenge of reconnecting with Maria amid the chaos that unfolded. As he walked away from the mansion, thoughts raced through Ethan's mind, about Maria, about what had been lost and could still be reclaimed. The future beckoned, but with it came the overwhelming weight of choices yet to be made. Ethan knew he had only begun to unearth the depths of his journey. Little did he realize, the confrontation with his father was just a prologue. The real challenge lay ahead. How far would he have to go to reclaim not only Maria's trust, but also his own identity? Ethan took tentative steps away from the mansion, feeling the weight of his decision settle into the pit of his stomach. Each stride brought with it a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. He had liberated himself from his father's grip, but he was unanchored in a world he had long avoided. The clarity he had felt moments earlier began to waver as doubts crept in, whispering the fears he had worked hard to silence. He paused under a flickering streetlight, the soft glow illuminating the turmoil etched on his face. How would he face Maria? All those conversations they shared, each one a thread tying him to a truth he dared not acknowledge. He had painted himself as a spectator in his life, abandoning any sense of accountability. And now, the very thought of confronting her seemed like climbing a mountain with no gear. As shadows danced in the corners of his mind, Ethan recalled her laughter, the fire in her eyes as she spoke about fleeting dreams of a brighter future. Dreams that felt distant and hazy now, much like the path ahead of him. He needed to reach out, to find her, not only to seek reconciliation, but to restore a sense of purpose that had eluded him until now. With a determined breath, he pulled out his phone. A message to Maria had been sitting in drafts for days, words of failed attempts to share the discomfort gnawing at him. But it was that nagging hesitation that held him captive, fearing her response, fearing rejection. Would she see him as the coward he had been, or would she recognize the man seeking redemption? Taking a leap of faith, he pressed send, and felt an urgency pulse through him. He had made an assertion. He could no longer operate within the constraints laid before him. But the reality of carving a new path was daunting, steeped in uncertainty. His father's voice haunted him, every word a reflection, echoing the lessons learned about success measured in profit rather than conscience. Days later, a reply from Maria came through. Her words were brief but heavy with weight. She was willing to meet, but family obligations kept her busy. Her hesitation reflected the mindset he had nurtured so carefully, a reluctance to believe that change was possible. Resentment washed over him, mixing with guilt. He had played a role in crafting this narrative, one built on exploitation disguised as corporate growth. Unsure of the best approach, Ethan began mapping out plans for their meeting. Should he confront the past directly, or would it be wiser to ease into their shared history, drawing on the bonds he hoped to rebuild? He blocked out distractions, immersing himself in every resource available on conflict resolution, rebuilding trust, and the art of negotiation, seeking armor to strengthen his resolve. Each article read nudged him toward an uncomfortable realization. He was not just repairing a fractured relationship, but also wrestling with his own history, laden with the scars of complacency. The days turned into sleepless nights as he rehearsed various dialogues in his head. He realized the more he prepared, the clearer his objective became: to advocate for a future where ethics could coexist with ambition, where his legacy could transform into a force for good. This mission was more daunting than facing his father, and yet it was also invigorating. As the day of the meeting approached, Ethan stood at the threshold of a pivotal moment in his life. The siren call of his father's world beckoned, one of comfort and predictability. But this new path required a bravery he had yet to summon fully. He wrestled with that internal clash, questioning the intentions driving his need to seek forgiveness. Was it truly about redeeming himself, or was there a deeper call towards responsibility? Finally, as he prepared to leave for their meeting spot, a sudden notification blared across his phone. Breaking news about a scandal within the family business, a breach that had sent ripples of discontent through the company their father had built. The message was clear. Upheaval had arrived, and it would demand a response, not just from the company, but from him as well. How would he navigate this imminent crisis while striving to reconnect with Maria? With a deep breath, he closed his eyes, knowing that the time had come to face both his past and the future waiting to unfold.
Ethan stood frozen for a moment, grappling with the weight of the news that loomed over him. The family business was in turmoil, and his heart raced at the thought of the implications. How could he approach Maria when his own life felt like a house of cards ready to collapse? But perhaps this very calamity was the catalyst he needed, both for himself and his relationship with her. He took a steadying breath and began walking, focused more on the ground beneath him than the chaos of his thoughts. Composure was essential. In crisis, clarity often hid behind the fog of emotional upheaval. Purpose surged within him as he realized that navigating this scandal would not only be about salvaging his family's reputation, but also about forging a new role for himself, a role anchored in integrity rather than greed. As he approached their meeting point, small cafe where they once shared countless dreams, Ethan's mind raced. He envisioned scenarios where he could embrace this moment of vulnerability and use it to his advantage. Perhaps if he aligned his personal crisis with the mounting pressure facing the business, he could present himself to Maria not merely as a remorseful figure seeking redemption, but as someone motivated by a newfound clarity of purpose. Inside the cafe, he chose a table by the window, the familiar scent of coffee mingling with the cool autumn breeze that crept through the door. It felt like a sanctuary, one that would soon be disrupted by a conversation fraught with tension and unresolved feelings. The rustle of the door prompted him to look up. Maria stepped in. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on him. Her warm smile flickered briefly before retreating into an apprehensive expression. "Ethan," she greeted, pulling out the chair opposite him. Silence draped between them, thick with unspoken words. "Thank you," he managed, his throat tight. "We need to talk about everything, what happened, and the news," she replied, her voice steady but her hands betraying her anxiety as they rested on the table. He nodded, recognizing the gravity of her statement, enveloped in mutual consciousness of the past and present. "I know I've made choices that hurt you, that hurt us both, but I'm ready to face the truth, whatever it is." Maria sighed, and he could see the storm of her emotions bubbling beneath the surface. "You knew how your decisions affected others, Ethan. How could you not see that before?" She leaned in closer, urgency coloring her tone. "And now, with the scandal, don't you see? This is your moment to step up. But do you really want to? What if you just retreat back to what feels safe, back to the mansion, to your father?" Ethan's heart pounded with the weight of her accusation, yet it sparked something deep within him, an acknowledgement of accountability. "I don't want to be that person. I refuse to go back to that world, Maria. I want to build something else entirely, with you." Their eyes locked, and in that instant he felt the truth swell within him. Confronting this moment wasn't just about salvaging their relationship. It was about committing to a vision he had barely begun to understand, one where ethical responsibility had a place in the shadowed corridors of wealth. "What do you mean?" Her voice was softer now, almost hesitant, as if she was reluctantly allowing him to share his vision. "I want to challenge my father's legacy," Ethan proclaimed, feeling a rush of conviction as each word spilled out. "To advocate for a direction that aligns profit with purpose. I want to be the change that the company and we so desperately need." Maria seemed to absorb his declaration, her eyes widening as the underlying tension transformed into something electric. "But how do you plan to do that amidst this chaos? How will you manage? Both the business and us?" Ethan felt the uncertainty lurking beneath her question, but it only fueled the fire of his determination. "I won't shy away from the crisis. I'll confront it head on. But I need your help, your insights to navigate this. We can do it together." The air shifted once more, a flicker of hope mingling with the fear of what lay ahead. But before either could respond, another notification broke the charged silence. An alert on Ethan's phone about an emergency board meeting called in light of the scandal. It wasn't just the family business at stake. It was a chance to redefine his identity in a public arena. Ethan looked back at Maria, resolute. "I have to go. This can't wait. Will you stand with me?"
Maria's gaze held a mix of uncertainty and burgeoning trust as she nodded. As he got up to leave, the undertow of the values he was challenging swirled within him. He was diving into a storm, but felt a newfound balance between the past he was shedding and the future he was stepping toward. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with conflict, but the weight of expectation didn't daunt him. It ignited a sense of purpose he had long feared would remain extinguished. With that resolve coursing through him, he stepped out of the cafe, ready to confront more than just a business crisis. He was set to rewrite the narrative of his legacy. Ethan stepped into the boardroom, his palms slightly clammy, as the scent of polished wood and stale coffee pervaded his senses. The hushed murmurs of the board members cut through his thoughts, each voice underscored by uncertainty and tension as they found their seats. He was aware of their eyes on him, scrutinizing, waiting for him to step up, to offer a glimmer of leadership. He inhaled deeply, trying to ground himself. For years, he had moved in his father's shadow, always the dutiful son waiting for approval. But today was different. Today, he wasn't just fulfilling his predictable role. He was stepping into uncharted territory. Ethan, a sharp voice interrupted his thoughts. Jonathan, his father's right-hand man, the embodiment of the company's old guard. We need a clear plan of action. The media is turning the crisis into a feeding frenzy. Ethan met Jonathan's intense gaze. There was no question this man saw him as a mere extension of his father's ambition. We need to address the ethical implications of our operations first, he said, his voice steady. We have been operating in murky waters for too long, prioritizing profit over people. If we redirect our focus towards sustainable practices, we could emerge stronger and gain public trust. A ripple of disbelief coursed through the board members. He could read their thoughts. This was radical, perhaps naive. Might be worth trying once the dust settles, another board member chimed in, skepticism dripping from his voice. But right now, we need a dollar figure. What will it cost us?
Ethan felt a rush of frustration heating his cheeks. They were missing the point entirely. With each insistence on profits over principles, he felt the internal struggle of his new resolve against the long-embedded corporate culture. We can't keep calculating our worth based on quarterly returns. We're losing sight of our impact. It's time we redefine success, not just in dollars, but in value to our community and our employees. Questions ricocheted among the board members. Ethan could practically hear gears turning in their minds. Debate ensued, resonating through the room as he fought for his ideas against a well-entrenched status quo. After a lengthy back and forth, the tension gave way to a fragile consensus. They agreed to form a committee to explore ethical practices, a compromise that only partially satisfied Ethan, but served as the first crack in the wall of traditional thinking. As the meeting adjourned, several members offered half-hearted praise. Ethan felt a mix of triumph and apprehension. This was just a small victory, but it ignited something deeper, a yearning to reclaim his own narrative. Outside the boardroom, his phone buzzed. Glancing at it, his heart jumped. Maria's name lit up the screen. A simple text, but it transported him back to the cafe, the promise of partnership sparking more than just hope. How did it go? He paused to consider the enormity of the shift he was initiating within the company, a departure from the old ways. More importantly, he thought of how that mirrored his journey with her. He tapped back a response, pulling those revelations together. We made a start. It's about to get wild, though. Can we meet? I need you. An immediate reply followed. I'll be there. His heart thrummed in anticipation. The conversation with Maria would be their first as comrades, united not only in love, but in a shared vision. As he navigated the bustling lobby toward the exit, he felt a current of invigoration, a stark contrast to the hesitant boy who once withered under the overwhelming weight of expectations. Here, in the eye of the storm, Ethan was discovering his voice above the backdrop of anxiety and chaos. Stepping into the parking lot, he looked up at the sky, the vastness above reflecting the ambition unfurling within him. Today brought him closer to breaking free of the confines he had always accepted. But the awakening was just beginning, and with it came a bubbling curiosity about how deeply he was willing to push against the tides of his past. Would he fully embrace this change, both personally and professionally? Would Maria grasp the depth of commitment he was ready to undertake? Ethan shook off the doubts as he leaned against his car, ready for the next phase of his journey. But just as urgency filled him to drive toward their meeting, another notification caught his eye. A news alert flashed on his phone, the headline stark and foreboding about the fallout from the scandal. A name he knew all too well appeared. Ethan's heart raced again, a fresh wave of apprehension washing over him. How would this revelation change everything he was just beginning to build? What secrets remained in the shadows of his father's empire that he had yet to uncover? With renewed determination fueling his steps, he knew he was ready to confront the truth of not just the company, but of his family, even if confronting it meant unraveling everything he once believed. As Ethan pulled into the parking lot of the cafe where he and Maria had first shared their vision, the news alert continued to pulse in his mind. His father's reputation was hanging by a thread, and he felt the pressure intensifying in his chest. The idea of facing the implications of the scandal was daunting, yet it ignited a flicker of determination. In this moment, uncertainty clashed violently with the urge to step fully into his own identity. He arrived a few moments early, needing to regroup before facing Maria. Knocking back the remnants of anxiety, he stepped inside the cafe. The familiar aroma of roasted coffee beans enveloped him, calming his racing thoughts. As he settled into a corner table, he pulled out his phone, scrolling through the details of the unfolding crisis. The words were sharp and unforgiving. He skimmed over phrases like mismanagement and corporate deceit. Each line felt like shards of glass slicing directly into the heart of everything he was trying to build. When Maria walked in, her presence filled the space with a comforting warmth. She approached with a smile that briefly melted the worries away, a reminder of what victory could truly mean. The contrast between his internal turmoil and her sunny demeanor was palpable, but he quickly masking his apprehension. "How did the meeting go?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. Ethan hesitated. How could he explain the depth of turmoil that lay beneath a seemingly accomplished facade? "Better than I expected, actually. They agreed to form a committee for ethical practices," he admitted, but the weight of the scandal hung heavily in the air between them. "That's huge!" Her enthusiasm was genuine, but it felt out of sync with the gravity of his thoughts. "You're making real progress." "Maybe," he said slowly, his mind clouded with self-doubt. "But it feels fragile. It's a small step against an avalanche of problems." He leaned in, voice low. "And now my father. The headlines. It's not just business anymore, it's personal." Maria's expression shifted, the corners of her mouth falling as she absorbed the gravity of his situation. "Ethan, you're not your father. You're forging your own path. This is your chance to redefine what that means." Her words were meant to reassure him, yet they came with a question he wasn't ready to answer. How could he distance himself from a legacy that had defined him for so long? "I can't help but feel the shadows creeping in," he admitted. "What if all of this I'm trying to build collapses? What if my own decisions end up tied to his mistakes?" She reached across the table, pinching the bridge of her nose. "That's the risk of change. But staying silent, letting them dictate your path, that's the real failure." The fire behind her words began to kindle something inside him. He needed to think deeper, reevaluate the foundations of his own beliefs, rather than mirroring his father's legacy blindly. "I'm starting to see that," he confessed, feeling the weight of his own awakening stirring within. "But it's terrifying to think about facing all of this, especially if it leads to confrontation with him." In that moment, clarity illuminated his thoughts. This wasn't just about changing the company. It was about taking control of his own narrative, confronting the issues head-on, regardless of how uncomfortable it made him. It felt as if the boards were shifting under him, thrusting him into a decision he couldn't ignore any longer. "There has to be a way to confront him," he uttered, determination seeping into his voice. "Not just for me, but for the company, and for those who have suffered due to his choices." Maria gazed at him, a mixture of pride and concern. "You're ready, Ethan. It won't be easy, but you can do this. This is your chance to embrace who you really are." As they sat there, contemplating the tumult awaiting him, Ethan felt the transformation within himself solidifying. His journey wasn't merely to flip the corporate script, but to expose the heart of his family's darkness and reshape it into something brighter. And then, as if the universe was responding to his newfound determination, Ethan's phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number flashed on screen, the contents unreadable but ominous enough to churn his gut with both dread and curiosity. What more did he have to face before he could truly claim his identity? Ethan didn't fully grasp the upcoming storm brewing ahead, but the call to action pulsed with urgency. The moment had come for him to confront more than just business decisions. It was about challenging his very lineage. Would he find the courage to stand against what was threatening to drown him? Or would he falter, caught in the churning tide of familial loyalty? Questions hung wildly in the air, and the next steps seemed as uncertain as the shadows lurking in his past. Ethan's heart raced as he stared at the message on his phone. The initials at the bottom sent shivers down his spine. Dad. The simple correspondence felt like a trigger, reviving his anxiety and intertwining it with his determination. Standing at the crossroads, the tension between legacy and self-identity surged like wild tides against a rocky cliff. "Are you okay?" Maria's voice broke the spell, drawing his attention back to the cafe and the murmur of life around them. Taking a deep breath, he forced the whirlwind of thoughts back into focus. "I need to know what he wants. I can't just ignore it this time." Maria looked at him with a mix of concern and resolve. "You don't have to face this alone, Ethan. Whatever it is, we can handle it together." Half of him wanted to retreat, let the shadows swallow him whole, while the other half pushed him into confrontation. What would his father say? Would it be another iteration of feigned concern and misdirection, or a genuine plea for connection? Either way, a reckoning was necessary, and deep down, he recognized this was the doorway to his own reclamation. "I'll respond," he declared, and began typing a terse message. After hitting send, an unsettling sense of foreboding washed over him. As they sat in silence, sipping their coffee, he felt the weight of the world thrust upon his shoulders. Just then, the cafe door swung open, letting a rush of chilly air creep inside, echoing the external chaos of his internal struggle. "Ethan," Maria's voice was gentle yet insistent. "You know this could lead to a confrontation." "I know," he admitted, eyes scanning the cafe as if searching for an escape route. "But I can't keep running from it. I need clarity, for me and the company." "It's about more than that," she countered. "This is about you finally stepping into your own light." Her words wrapped around him with an urgency he hadn't anticipated. How could he step into the light while everything around him felt drenched in darkness? The mention of his father loomed ominously over every decision he made. Yet, the revelation that he was not destined to repeat the past began to take root. Suddenly, his phone chimed again, a response from his father. "Meet me at the office. We need to talk." An inexorable knot formed in his stomach. The idea of facing his father, especially now, felt like an executioner's blade poised above him. But there was no retreating. He'd come too far, along a path he had begun to carve for himself, one that didn't end in his father's shadows. "I have to go," he said, determination hardening his voice. Maria's brow furrowed. "You're really going to meet him?" "Yes," he said more firmly. "I've made enough excuses. I must confront what's been holding me back." As he stood to leave, the thrill of potential transformation coiled in his chest, both fear and the urge to fight churning inside him like a storm. "I'll be on standby," Maria responded, her reassurance grounding him. "You've got this." Ethan stepped out into the brisk air. Each footfall echoed the resolve to seize the moment, ensuring that his journey wasn't merely a reflection of his father's errors. Arriving at the office, he felt the weight of their history press against his skin. Each corner of the building, familiar yet suffocating. The glass doors slid open, revealing a world where decisions mattered, where he could either stabilize a crumbling legacy or reshape it completely.
His father was already there, serious, his expression inscrutable. Would they just clash, or was there room for Ethan's new insights? The chess game they were about to play would test everything. "So, you decided to show up," his father stated, a hint of challenge underlining his words. Ethan took a breath, simmering anticipation electrifying the air between them. "We need to talk about your role in all of this." With the declaration hanging between them, the battle lines were drawn, and there could be no turning back. Would he rise as an advocate for change, or would he be swept away in the tides of history? The weight of the moment settled as they locked eyes. The room crackled with unresolved tension, the outcome poised on a knife's edge. What would he discover, and how would it shape the man he intended to become? The moment of truth was coming, and the stakes were higher than ever. Would he emerge victorious in this personal crusade, or would he find himself defeated again by the legacy he sought to escape? Ethan felt the air shift as the words hung in a fragile silence. His father leaned back slightly, a defensive gesture that ignited resentment and the desire for open confrontation within him. The office felt like a battlefield, every piece of furniture a reminder of the legacy that felt both suffocating and inescapable. "Do you really think you can change things here?" his father answered, skepticism flowing in his voice. "You're still wrestling with your own inexperience." The accusation stung, igniting sparks of rebellion in Ethan's heart. "Inexperience or not, I'm ready to take responsibility for my future, something you've never allowed me to do." His father's eyes narrowed, the battle lines were clearer than ever. This wasn't just about business, it was personal, a family feud that transcended the office walls. Suddenly, Ethan understood that this was not merely an us versus them dynamic. It was a me versus the shadow of you conflict. The realization formed a flicker of clarity in the storm of emotions swirling inside him. "What about your own shadow?" his father snapped, the strain in his voice revealing his discomfort. "You think you can say no to what this company demands? It's more than a job, it's a legacy." Ethan took a deliberate breath, grounding himself. "A legacy built on fear and control isn't a legacy I wish to inherit." It was bold assertion, even reckless. But in that moment, he felt the stirrings of a newfound strength rising within him. "I was hoping you had something more than idealistic slogans," his father retorted. "This company isn't a charity. You want to change it? You'll need to make tough decisions." The words sunk deep. Part of Ethan's transformation was this newfound yearning to redefine what tough decisions meant. Did it inherently mean choosing profit over people, or was he willing to embrace a different truth? What if tough decisions mean understanding, not just results?
Challenging himself as much as his father. His father's face darkened, and the tension reached a tipping point. "Talk all you want about understanding, but let's be real. This is about survival, not compassion. You've been sheltered from the reality of business." Confronting the past meant sparking inner conflict. Ethan wrestled with the reflection of himself through his father's lens. Shelter or suffocation? What had he really experienced growing up? The doors his father had closed also opened a window to unexamined truths. "I'm not sheltered anymore," Ethan responded, his voice steadier now, infused with a blend of vulnerability and strength. The words felt transformative, echoing the man he wished to become. His father shifted, seemingly taken aback for a moment. "So, if you're truly committed, what exactly do you propose?" Ethan calculated his response. He realized he was standing on a precipice, the exit behind him and the future ahead, obscured but inviting.
I propose that we create a work culture that prioritizes innovation and inclusivity. It's time to redefine the company's values." Redefine? His father's scorn was palpable. "And how would you implement these whims?" A deep breath steadied Ethan. For too long he had been reacting instead of taking charge. "By introducing initiatives that engage our employees and those we serve, we can elevate our mission beyond profits into something greater." "Sounds noble, but naive," his father dismissed with a wave of his hand. What fueled his father's dismissal was not just challenge, but fear of losing control. Ethan could sense the walls slowly starting to crumble, but the war for his own voice wasn't over. "I might be naive, but I'd rather be that than complicit in a failing ideology," he said, making himself vulnerable yet again. The room filled with silence again, making every heartbeat palpable. His father stood now, gesturing toward the skyline outside the window. "When you're ready to face reality, you let me know," he stated coldly, a defensive posture suggesting their conversation had reached a stalemate. Feeling the gravity of the moment, Ethan knew he had made strides, but the battle was far from over. "I won't back down," he declared. "This is just the beginning." As he turned to leave, he felt a strange mixture of dread and empowerment. Was he prepared to storm the gates of his own legacy? The journey ahead was uncharted, but that uncertainty thrummed with potential. In that moment, he realized that true transformation demanded risk. As he walked through the office doors, the world beyond waited with both challenges and opportunities. Yet in the back of his mind loomed an unsettling thought. Was he ready to risk not only his career, but also potentially reshaping his relationship with a father who had always defined the very fabric of his existence? Glimmers of resolution flickered within him, but the way forward remained murky. One question lingered. Would the commitment to his new path propel Ethan into his own identity, or pull him further into the abyss? Of their generational conflict? Ethan Blackwell stood outside the towering office building, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. His heart pulsed with adrenaline, a potent blend of resolve and uncertainty. He had confronted his father, challenged the very core of his legacy, and for the first time he had taken a step toward independence. The journey ahead loomed dauntingly, yet a flicker of hope ignited within him, a hope shaped by growth, clarity, and a commitment to forge his own path. In the days that followed, the fallout from his father's resistance began to unfold. Media reports swirled around the scandal, and discussions of accountability gripped the boardroom. As Ethan sat in meetings, he found his voice growing stronger amidst competing opinions. He articulated strategies that emphasized ethics, sustainability, and inclusivity, a vision for the company that resonated not only with him, but with the burgeoning voices of younger employees, eager for change. During one pivotal meeting, as he presented the committee's new direction, he spotted individuals nodding in agreement, faces that had previously appeared indifferent. They were beginning to see beyond profits, embracing the possibility of a legacy grounded in integrity. It felt liberating to lay the foundation of a new narrative, one where he could reshape not only their corporate identity, but also redefine his own place within it. Ethan's relationship with Maria took on new dimensions as well. Their shared discussions sparked innovative ideas that transcended corporate boundaries, igniting a desire to create real change in the community. Together, they envisioned programs offering workforce development opportunities for marginalized groups, initiatives that aligned the company's goals with social responsibility. Finally feeling the weight of purpose, Ethan reveled in tackling the challenges of building an inclusive corporate culture alongside someone who valued the same principles. As he navigated the complexities of change, he also made strides in his relationship with his father.
Their discussions became more frequent, more contentious, yet constructive, allowing Ethan to stand firm while still preparing emotionally for the consequences. Every conversation chipped away at the ironclad walls built through years of conflict, gradually forging a faint connection based on mutual recognition of their diverging visions. However, the real transformation was internal. Ethan learned to embrace vulnerability, recognizing that genuine connections could only be built by letting go of the fear of judgment. Through collaboration, he found strength he never knew he had, the ability to advocate for himself and for others, even in the face of resistance. He grew more assured in articulating his beliefs, compelling others to follow suit. Empowering those around him became his mantra, allowing him to lead not through authority but through inspiration. Then came a pivotal moment. The company hosted a conference focused on ethical business practices. With hesitant excitement, Ethan delivered a keynote address, proselytizing the importance of accountability and community impact. The audience responded with unexpected vigor, applause echoing through the hall as he spoke fervently about creating a legacy rooted in compassion rather than control. At the conference's conclusion,
He stepped off the stage, flooded with elation. A woman approached him, tears in her eyes, thanking him for shedding light on issues that mirrored her own struggles. At that moment, Ethan understood what fulfillment truly meant. It lay in the connection between individual narratives and collective empowerment. It was here, surrounded by people who believed in change, that his identity crystallized, not as Ethan Blackwell, heir to a flawed legacy, but as Ethan Blackwell, a champion of reform. Weeks later, amidst the buzz of newfound direction, Ethan received a text from his father. "Let's discuss your proposal over dinner." The invitation felt monumental, a sign that the dialogue was evolving. As he read the message, a wave of gratitude washed over him. He recognized how far he had come. He was no longer defined by his father's expectations, but by the transformation he had initiated within himself. As he prepared for dinner, the prospect of yet another challenging conversation loomed. Ethan smiled. He had taken incredible strides toward not only redefining the company's legacy, but also creating a life forged from his own values. The path ahead was uncertain, riddled with challenges and revelations, yet he was ready. In that moment of quiet reflection, Ethan felt solid confidence in himself. He accomplished something profound. He navigated through turmoil, claimed his truth, and built a foundation of values that would resonate beyond walls, echoing into a future filled with purpose and possibility. With renewed determination, he vowed to continue challenging the dynamics of power, not just in business, but in every aspect of life. The shadows of his father's legacy no longer intimidated him. Instead, they served as a reminder of where he had come from. With anticipation coursing through his veins, he understood that this was just the beginning. He had achieved a significant metamorphosis, but the call to deeper transformation was constant, a journey without end. Now was the moment to harness that momentum. You need to subscribe now to not miss these exclusive emotional stories that will help you overcome your own challenges. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about how Ethan's journey concludes. What do you think will happen next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this impactful conclusion. Let's spread the message of personal growth.